Hi friends, welcome to my crow pose and side crow pose tutorials. These are just tutorials, so I recommend that you do some warm-ups first. Crow pose and side crow are a lot of work on the wrists. I do have a video up for some wrist drills, so check out my yoga for wrists video and pick a few of those drills or do some warm-ups on your own. It's also really great to warm up the core beforehand, warm up the back of the heart, so doing some nice deep cat-cows and really focusing on that cat pose as we spread the scapula will help us engage our core as we move into these. For side crow, obviously there's twisting involved, so doing some twists, whether that's a seated twist, a supine twist, maybe a twisted chair posture, just really warming ourselves up so that we're as ready as we can be, getting some nice hip flexion in there, so sitting in malasana can be really helpful, or yogi squat to prepare. Never just jump into these exercises. I do these tutorials with an understanding that you come ready and warm. It's a great time to, if you're doing another YouTube video before the cool down, after we've done everything else, it's a great time to press pause, try a new tutorial, and then cool yourself down so that you have time on either end to warm up, heat up, and then release and cool down. So we're going to start with crow pose or bakasana. There's a few varieties, and there's more than a few varieties of crow pose, but I'm going to show you just two today that we can focus on, and then we'll move into side crow. It can be really helpful to have some blocks just to help you get your hips up. Now, if you don't have blocks, don't worry. Some sturdy books, some small but strong boxes can work really well. And they're really just to put our feet on as we go into this posture to help get the hips up. Now, there's some arm balances where it's more helpful to put things under your feet, like the crow poses, and then there's some arm balances where it's more helpful to put things under your hands to get a bit more lift from the ground, like firefly, or tadasana, or flying pigeon. So just keep that in mind. It's not always one way or the other. Now, if you have a fear of falling on your face, smashing your nose, it's a very legit fear. It's happened to all of us before. I totally understand that. You can help take away some of that fear by putting a nice pillow in front of your face too. So if you know that's you, there's no shame in getting a nice pillow. That way you're like, well, I have no excuse. I'm going to go for this posture, if I feel ready for it, because even if I do fall, well, there's just a pillow right there. So I'm going to take my blocks. I'm going to take two of them. You can do this on one, just long ways if you'd like. And I'm going to step up onto them into kind of an ugly malasana. And when I say ugly malasana, my feet are really close together and my heels are up. But who cares? Because I'm not focused on malasana here. I want to get some compression. And what I mean by compression is limiting the space between my low belly and my thighs. But while I do that, thinking about pulling my sternum forward. Because I can bring my sternum down to my thighs, no problem, but I'm really rounded here, especially in the low back, which is what I want to avoid. I want to save that rounding from that upper back to help me find my core. So as I send my sit bones back, I think about reaching my sternum forward, bring my knees wide, and wiggle it down in. And here's where I can do some little bounces if this feels okay on my hips and my knees. Just get myself really situated down in between my thighs. Okay, so the first variety of crow pose tends to be a little bit easier for people who feel like they might fall because it keeps you closer to the ground and also don't necessarily have the most flexible compression because they can't get their knees way up by their armpits. So that is bringing the knees out wide and keeping them turned out wide by the elbows. And you can bring them up a little bit higher, but it tends to be a little bit easier if they're just right above the elbows and turned wide. Now, I'm going to turn my hands about 5 to 10 degrees out from the midline, root down through the inner edges of the hands, and my hands are shoulder distance apart. Now I need to send the energy forward and up, because if I send my energy straight down, that's where I'm going to go. So keep that in mind, root down through the inner edges of the hands. And here's where you have to start trusting yourself. With my knees out wide, I'm going to gently squeeze my elbows in towards the midline. That's just to help remind myself that as I pull everything towards the midline, as I hug it in, that's going to give me more stability. So many times we see these elbows go really wide in crow pose. Let's try to keep them wrapped in as if we were squeezing an imaginary block between our forearms. Now I need to trust myself. Shift the weight forward. That's the forward part. The weight comes into my fingertips. Claw your fingertips into the mat. Keep hugging the knees in slightly. You can keep them turned out to the side as you hug the shins in. And the up part comes from the puffing up through the back of the heart. So the space between the shoulder blades, puff, puff, puff. suck your navel in towards your spine. Now, here's the tricky part. You must shift forward enough so that your elbow stacks over your wrist. If you don't and you only shift forward and your elbow is still behind your wrist, well, there's no way you're going to be able to lift your feet. And yes, it is scary. It might feel like you're going to fall, but that's why maybe you have that pillow right here to remind yourself that even if you do fall, you're pretty close to the ground. So shifting forward, claw the fingertips into the mat, dig the inner edges of the hands into the mat, puff, puff, puff through the back of the heart like you're doing cat pose. From here, maybe one heel curls in, hug it in close to the sit bone, release. Maybe the other, release. If you feel like it, really trusting yourself, leading slightly with the chin, pull both heels up, squeeze the big toe mounds together, hug the ankles, and close towards the midline. And coming out slowly, never spending too much time in crow at the beginning if this is new for you. Come out slowly. We don't shake the wrists dramatically because we just had a lot of weight on them. We gently roll them or take them into chicken. So that's one variation of crow. It is not my favorite, in case you couldn't tell. I like the hip high variation instead of the hips kind of down lower and our knees out wide. So this second variation of crow here, I'm going to start from that same position. I'm going to wiggle my way down, get that deep compression. Hands turn out about 10 degrees from the midline, shoulder distance apart. Push down through the inner edges. Dig the fingertips into the mat. Wrap the triceps, so wing the elbows wide. Wrap them towards the back of the mat. Hug your imaginary block. Now take your knees up to the outer edges of your armpits, like little wings, up, up, up. Now, I don't know if you guys remember Thigh Master, but it was a drill, it was a machine that you could use between your thighs to squeeze it. So you're essentially gonna Thigh Master yourself by taking your knees and wrapping them towards the midline to stack them right underneath your armpit, but you're pulling your triceps as you get there. Hang on one second, puppy dog interruption. Quaco! Sorry guys, there was a toad. No, really, no. There was a toad in the tarp and it was all kinds of exciting. So, where were we? Digging through the fingertips, inner edges of the hands, wrap the triceps back. Take the knees to the outer edges, wrap the triceps in even more. Now as you do so, shift the weight forward, puff up through the back of the heart to shift the weight up. Bring the elbows to stack over the wrists. Claw your fingertips into the earth. Lead slightly with the chin, curl one heel in, and then maybe the other. If both heels lift, press the big toe mounds together, curl the heels in close to the sit bones. It's going to help lift you up a little bit more. Keep hugging the elbows in. Keep really rooting down through the inner edge of the hand. Breathe. Claw your fingertips into the mat and puff through the back of the heart. So how can you use your breath to help you get into this? There's obviously a few different ways and you can explore and see which works best for you. For me, what I like to do is lift off at the bottom of an exhale, so I'm that kind of no breath when I'm lightest and my navel is pulled most towards my spine, or at the very beginning of the next inhale to take advantage of that lift. So I encourage you to explore and see which one works best for you. But that's crow pose, 2 different variations. Always move slowly. Know that if you're following the cues, and even if you can't lift that second foot off the ground, you're still getting the benefit of the posture. So there's no need to be hard on yourself or be down on yourself if that second foot just doesn't want to lift. I'm going to move on now to side crow. And there's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of differences. I'm not going to use my blocks for this one, but understand that you can have your feet under your blocks under your feet for side crow in kind of the same manner that I did for crow pose. So that's always an option to help you lift your hips up. Now, you can come into side crow from 2 different ways. You can come into it from a twisted chair or a twisted toe stand. So I'm going to come into from a toe stand. So that's up on my toes, my Barbie feet, knees together. And one of the really important things to remember with side crow is that you no longer have 2 legs. You are a mermaid. Zip up your tail. It's never leaving. Don't let the knees shift back and forth. Don't let them open wide. Zip it up. Squeeze your sit bones towards the midline. Beautiful. Also, how many times do we see something like this for side crow? Crunching in the side body, taking our hands towards the side of the mat. And then I'm going to turn this way just so you guys see it. And then, even though this is a single arm balanced posture, what happens is we turn our hands to the side like this, and oopsies, we just conveniently kind of like rest our bum on this right elbow, which then forces this right shoulder to go down, and then we're like, oh God, there's the floor, and suddenly this turned into like, I don't know, this really ugly, unsafe version of fallen angel, which as most people know is like one of my least favorite yoga poses ever, just because so many chances for injury. But anyway, I digress. So how do we avoid those things? That's the important part, right? So coming back into our toe stand, let's first fix that crunching. So taking our right fingertips outside of our body, and here's where also, if you'd like to use a block just for balance, you could take a block to the side of your body. Reach your left arm up. Reach it up and over. Find length through that left side body. Zip your knees up. You only have one leg. And as you exhale, pull your navel towards your spine. Spin your upper body to the right. Lower body to the left. Hook your elbow on the outside edge of your right leg. Now, don't just stop there. See if you can hug your navel more in and up. Lift up through the sternum. And as you exhale, pull your navel more towards your spine. Maybe you can find a little bit more space to twist and walk down towards your armpit, hooking your armpit to the outer edge of your right knee. Instead of turning your left hand sideways, I want you to point your fingers in the same direction as your knees. I know it's crazy. Move your block. It's in the way. Same direction as the knees, which means I have to take my right fingertips also in the same direction as my knees. So not to the side of me, all the way over here, shoulder distance apart, maybe slightly turned out. This is going to not only help us with that wrap of the tricep that we talked about in crow pose, but also force us to shift the weight. So now my weight is in my feet, my hands are weirdly awkwardly out here. I must shift the weight into my hands. Remember, one leg, so knees are zipped together. Root down through the inner edges of the hand, root down through the fingertips, wrap the triceps, wrap the elbows towards the midline. Puff through the back of the heart. Weight comes forward. The puffing of the back of the heart helps you lift up. Reach slightly with the chin, lean it on forward until the elbows stack over the wrist, and then both feet at the same time, curl your heels in towards your sit bone. Hug them in towards your sit bone. Puff up through the back of the heart to hug your legs higher up onto your left arm. And slowly release. And come back down. Roll out the wrists. So this is just an alternative way, and it's really the only way that I teach to get into postures like side crow and Ekapada Kuntinyasana A and Ekapada Kuntinyasana B, just because it forces you to wrap the tricep, to shift the weight, and also takes away that crutch of that other arm kind of coming into your hip and causing you to dip your shoulder, which is really unstable on that second supporting shoulder. So I'll show it one time on the other side just so you guys can see it on both sides, because I know it's a little confusing and different than the way lots of people teach it. So coming back to my toe stand, or maybe I'll do it from chair this time so you guys can see. It's a little more awkward for me from chair, probably because I don't have very strong quads. So you have to sink deep into your chair. Inhale, lift your sternum. Exhale, navel towards your spine. Curve it on over to the left. Walk the right armpit down to the left knee. Take the fingertips facing forward. Reach the left hand over, shoulder distance apart. Shift the weight. Hug the elbows and puff, puff, puff through the back of the heart. Claw your fingertips into the mat. Claw the inner edges of the hand into the mat to protect the wrists. Peel both feet off at the same time. Hug up your mermaid tail. And release. Beautiful. So after you've tried this a few times, make sure that you're giving yourself some wrist love, some rolls, some stretches, some strengthening drills. Again, I have another video on this. And also take some time to wind down. Those are pretty intense postures. Those are heat building, fire building postures. Make sure you're doing a small wind down, counter posing, neutralizing practice, and always ending in Shavasana. Thanks so much for practicing with me today. If you have any other tutorials that you'd really like, please leave them in the comments, or just any feedback in general. I'd be happy to check it out. Thank you.